Today I have a project that was shared with us by a friend of the TronicsFix channel named Raul from Valencia, Spain, who shared with us a PS3 that he found after some pretty serious floods that happened there in the fall of 2024. Raul and his kids began the disassembly and a little bit of surface cleaning on it before deciding, you know what, we think we're going to send it over to TronicsFix and Restore and see what they can do. Alright, opening things up here for the first time, and we're finding this PS3 has been mostly disassembled already. A little bit of the mud has been wiped off, but still it's pretty dirty. Kind of a little bit of a surface clean, but yeah, here's the motherboard. Let's take a look here. Okay, here's the mud. So we've got a bunch built up on here. Way more than we're going to be able to handle with our usual cleaning method. So we're going to have to do something a little bit different today. Oops, my fan is loose. No problem. Just taking a look here at a couple of the articles to see if there's anything about a flood. And I don't speak or read Spanish, so I can't tell, but I'm sure somebody out there will be able to tell me what these articles are actually about on this newspaper. Here's another one. Does that look like a flood to you? Okay, I think that's all the parts. Let's take a look at this board. Definitely going to not be able to clean it the way we typically would, so I'm going to remove this battery and open up this box here so that we can access it, and we are going to try a different cleaning method, something I have not done here on the channel, but I have done some research on. I also typically don't open up these power supplies, but this one has been sitting dormant for long enough that I'm not worried at all about any electric charge remaining inside of it. I'm going to move these clips just kind of to the center a little bit. It's kind of some metal clips, and I'm using this Phillips head to be able to grab them and push them so that we can pull this case apart. There we go. We definitely have some mud that has built up in here. Here's a closer look at the power supply. I have a screw that's a little bit stripped here. Fortunately, I can grab it by the edges with these needle nose pliers, and we'll be able to get it out of the way. I definitely won't use it again, though. Man, there's so much mud inside of here. It just got everywhere. Alright, so my typical cleaning method of using IPA and cotton swabs just isn't going to work on this board. It's just way too much mud, and it would be too much waste. So I'm going to use water for pretty much everything. Not quite everything, but pretty much everything, including the motherboard here. If this makes you nervous, don't worry about it. It's actually pretty safe to do as long as we completely, and I mean completely, get this dry before we run any electricity through it. In fact, I've heard of a number of people who like to clean their motherboards in the dishwasher. I haven't tried that myself, but I might at some point. There are two potential dangers with water. Number one is rust, and that will happen if water sits and doesn't get dried off right away. The other problem is if you just don't get all of the water gone and then introduce electricity, that water, obviously being super conductive, is going to take that electricity and it's going to run it places that it shouldn't go, and it's going to fry the board. So with all of this stuff, I'm using this water to clean it, and I'm going to make sure to get it completely, absolutely completely dry before I put this stuff together and end up running electricity into it. But even if this process still made me a little nervous about using water to clean like this, I think of it this way. This thing was already in a flood. It's already been saturated by water well beyond what I'm doing right now, so at least I'm cleaning off the mud and getting all of that gunk away, and then we're going to use an air compressor and completely dry this off outside and then let it set like over weekend before I even come back to it, so we're going to be good. If this is your first time with us here at Restorish, I want to say welcome. My name is Rob, and here we are part of a greater team that is with Steve at TronicsFix, where he fixes stuff and has been doing so for a number of years. We started this channel as a way to kind of give a deep clean to some of that stuff. I realized just now while cleaning this that there are still a few screws holding two plates together as part of this heatsink, so let's get this out of the way. With a bunch of that drying done off camera and outside, we're going to come back to some of this other stuff that we didn't clean in the water, like this hard drive. I don't want to submerge this because there's just so much inside of here that I wouldn't be confident in my ability to get dry. So let's kind of clean the surface, and then we might take this apart a little bit further and see what it looks like on the inside. I find it fascinating how much the water in this mud is able to just get everywhere inside of this stuff. This fan doesn't feel too bad while I spin it. It doesn't feel like it's got a bunch of mud or dirt or stuff grinding inside of it, and so it might be usable. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a clean with this brush and some IPA, and we'll see if we can use it. I don't mind using sandpaper to remove some of the rust on stuff that's on the inside to keep it from rusting further. We're not gonna be able to look at it anyway. Of course, now that I got this clean is when I realized that this plug is kind of messed up here on the end, and I'm probably just gonna replace this fan with a different one anyway. We have another wire here that I found in the box. That'll have to be soldered back on. I want to take this power switch apart a little bit further because, like I'm finding with everything else, that water and mud just literally got anywhere that it could. So let's disassemble this, and yep. I'm using BW100 to spray inside of here to just help irrigate some of that dirt and mud where I can't quite reach with the bristles. Let's take a look at this hard drive again. I'm gonna, again, just kind of use that BW100 to spray something on there to get it a little bit wet, and then let's brush it off. Oh, there's a little pad on here. Okay. Here's what it looks like at the end, and that's as far as I'm gonna take this thing apart. I don't even know how to take it apart further. Again, using this sandpaper pad to help kind of take this rust away on a plate that's on the inside that I really don't mind what it looks like as long as I'm confident that the rust is stopped. Even after washing this in the sink, there's obviously some spots here that I missed or that didn't come up, so we're going to carefully go over the rest of this shell and try to remove all the rest of this dirt. Here's what our power supply looks like after washing and drying it thoroughly. There are a few places here that I'm just going to get some IPA on a brush and kind of get a little bit of visible dirt that I can see. And we'll go over all the other boards and pieces here that we washed as well and do the same thing. Just a little bit of residual flux on here from the last time someone soldered on the board. Here's a little piece of dirt that I can see stuck inside of there. Let's get it cleaned out. A number of these chips, if you look at them really closely, are still corroded a little bit with some dirt or mud even after washing, so we're just going to make sure to get every single one of these points where there's pins that could be bridged or connected together by this mud. Here's a good example of one that hopefully you can see the before and after. Alright, here's the part of the project I am dreading the most, the disk drive. So I have another disk drive here that I took out of a PS3 that we had around the shop here, and I'm going to use it as a side-by-side because this one covered in mud, I honestly can't even see where the screws are, so I don't even know how to take it apart without using another one to try to figure this puzzle out. I'm hoping that I don't have to take everything apart inside of this drive because there's just so many pieces, so many little gears and bands and springs and screws and parts, and it's just a nightmare. Here's the first part in here that I'm pretty confident I'm just going to replace. Not only is this rail kind of welded on here with rust, I'm just not confident that I'll be able to clean the eye of that laser good enough with anything that I could do to it. All right, that's as far as I think I'm going to try taking this apart, and just seeing if a little bit of spraying and washing under that sink will help me get all the mud out of this thing. We have a couple more boards that we're going to give the same treatment that we did to the motherboard and the power supply. Trying to be careful with this because there are a number of little pieces that actually could just come right off of this, and I definitely don't want to lose them down my drain. And wouldn't you know it, the thing started coming apart in my hand while I was washing it. So I'm going to try to keep each piece of this as together as I can and continue this clean. I'm hoping that this is enough to be able to get everything nice and clean on the inside here, but I don't know. It's hard to tell without being able to see underneath some of these moving parts. Wouldn't you know it, I forgot that I accidentally broke the only needle that we have for the end of our air compressor, so I'm having to use my electric air duster here to dry these pieces off today because I need to get them dry. It's doing a good job. We'll just go over it enough to make sure everything is good and dry. I have a few pieces that I'm just going to replace because I'm not going to be able to get them clean. Number one, we have this spinning part here that holds the disc. That is just grindy on the inside. I can't get inside of there. Then we have this rail as well with the laser that I'm not going to be able to get fixed. And so we also have this motor here. Those three parts I'm just going to pull out of the other disk drive. There's something on this that just I'm not getting up. So we're going to try to get this with a magic eraser. And it's still there. It's like some plaque. So if it's plaque, let's get the dental pick. Very carefully on here, and I can feel it. I can hear it scraping that stuff up. And I think this is going to do the trick and get those pins nice and clean again. Just going to put a little bit of deoxit back on these in order to keep them from corroding, and I think they should be good to go. I wanted to take a look at this mechanism from the donor disk drive just to see how it works again, and then we can see what we can do with this other one here. It kind of came apart in my hands while I was washing it. I think I should be able to get it back together, but before doing that, I'm just going to take it all apart because I want to look under these gears and everything and find out how good of a job cleaning were we actually doing with the water there. And my conclusion is we were not doing a good job cleaning. There's just stuff that we were not reaching, so I did not want to do this, but I'm going to. We're going to take everything apart inside of this disk drive and give it an actual clean on every surface. Honestly, what I'd like to do is just take everything apart, clean it, put it all in one big Ziploc bag and give it to Steve and say, hey, you can reassemble this for me, right? I have an idea for cleaning these screws with rust on them. I'm going to use this scour pad and just my regular old screwdriver and kind of run them inside of here with some pressure, and I'm wondering what that's going to do. Let's take a look. Not bad. I think I'm going to use that method. Alright, this disk drive has been fully disassembled, fully cleaned. I've kept everything kind of together in sections, and we're going to try to use this other disk drive as a guide to help us put it back together. I want to give you a little behind the scenes as to what's going through my head while I'm working on this project. It's kind of discouraging, honestly. I don't expect that this is going to work. I really am it's just way too much flood damage, and I'm just not expecting that I'm going to put everything back together and turn it on and there's going to be a miracle. That would make for a great video and a great story, but I just don't think that's what's going to happen today. So for a video that I'm not expecting a super positive, happy ending on, I'm putting an absolutely insane amount of time into cleaning it. Like a bonkers amount of time. Like I would not do this if I were doing it to try to make money by reselling this or something. I'm purely doing it because I get to make these videos and I enjoy the process, and hopefully make something that you enjoy watching too. So I have spent the better part of an hour looking, and I have lost one of these gears. So we're just going to take this part from our donor system, and unfortunately, that happens sometimes when you do this kind of stuff. It's going to bug me, but I can't find it. If it turns up, then I have that part to put back in the donor system. I want to put a little bit of this white lithium grease on these rails. That will help this laser be able to slide back and forth more easily. That feels pretty good. There we have it. At the speed of filming and editing and working on this project, that's about a day's work for this stupid disk drive that probably isn't going to work at all anyway. I hope you liked it. Remember, we have this plug on this fan that is kind of messed up, so we're going to pull this fan from our donor console and got Steve to do a little bit of filming for me, just soldering these things on. Not because this soldering level is beyond me, but because I asked him and he said he would, and I'm like, hey, one less thing for me to do. I mean, that's the way I should approach these projects, right? All right, I think that is pretty much everything. We have all of our parts clean and ready here laid out. We're going to throw all this stuff together. If we can figure out how to reassemble it, let's go to iFixit for a guide and put this thing back together. I want to harvest these thermal pads out of our donor system as well. Everyone familiar with Tronics Fix knows that I am not going to get this done perfectly, but we're going to try anyway. Nailed it. All right, there's nothing left to do today besides test it out. I do want to point out before I try powering it on that just plugging it in and flipping the switch on the back, I was able to get at least a little red indicator light here, which doesn't mean it's going to work, but it does mean that it's getting power. So with the smallest amount of hope against hope, let's see what happens when we hit the power button. Okay, we got a green light, a yellow light, red light. Okay, so we've looked into this just briefly at least, and this is what's referred to as the yellow light of death in a PS3. And unfortunately, it means that there's problems that are going to be well beyond my ability to solve. But somebody might be interested in getting inside of this and really digging into that circuit board and seeing what the issue is. So I'm definitely not going to throw it away, even if I'm going to move on from the project myself. We'll see if we can find somebody who really likes to tinker with this kind of stuff and would like the challenge of seeing if they can get to the root of what the problem is on this PS3. If you have an item that you think might make for a good cleaning experience here on Restorish, I'm going to leave a link at the top of the description for you where you can communicate with us. We are always looking for things that are particularly gross or have an interesting story behind them, so start a dialogue with us if you have something. I'm going to have YouTube leave a link right down here at the bottom of the screen if you want to keep hanging out with me and watch me clean a special edition Mountain Dew Xbox that was also in a flood. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time. Was there a zombie outbreak in Spain?